What happens when one of music's most legendary divas sits down with America's most beloved weatherman, and everything goes completely sideways? You're about to find out. Because this morning's Today Show interview between Roker and the incomparable Chaka went from warm and conversational to explosive in a matter of minutes. It all started innocently enough. Fresh off his weather segment, welcomed Chaka to Studio 1A with his trademark smile. Dressed in a flowing purple caftan, curls perfectly styled, the 10-time Grammy winner looked every bit the Queen of Funk. She was there to promote her new memoir, a candid, unflinching reflection on her life, fame, and the industry that shaped her. For the first few minutes, everything was smooth. Asked about her childhood in Chicago, her early days with Rufus, the stories behind the book. Chaka answered with warmth and wit, sharing anecdotes about her rise and the struggles she faced as a black woman in the 1970s music scene. Then came the pivot. "Your memoir doesn't shy away from the hard stuff," said, leaning in. "You write about addiction, family struggles, but also about your battles with the music industry. You're very critical of how labels treated artists of color, especially during your peak years." Chaka's eyes lit up with fire. "Critical? I'm honest. The exploitation was systemic, deliberate. They made millions off our talent and left us with pennies. I watched brilliant artists destroyed by contracts that were nothing short of modern-day slavery." The room shifted. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances. Adjusted in his chair. "Slavery is a very strong comparison," he said carefully. "It's the truth." Chaka shot back, her voice rising. "When you sign away your publishing rights for scraps, when you're forced to record songs you hate, when you have no control over your own artistry, what would you call it?" Raised his hands in a calming gesture. "I understand the frustration, but don't you think comparing unfair contracts to slavery might be, well, a bit extreme?" The air in Studio 1A dropped 10 degrees. "Extreme," Chaka repeated, slowly, deliberately. Her gaze locked on with an intensity that froze him in place. "With all due respect, you've spent your career in television, on networks that celebrated you. You've never had your culture stolen, your royalties manipulated, your art stripped for profit. So tell me, who exactly is it too extreme for, you? Or the people who've been exploited their whole lives?" Blinked, visibly rattled, as the weight of her words settled over the studio. "More. Appropriate for your comfortable morning show. Audience who don't want to hear about the ugly realities of how their favorite music gets made." The studio fell silent. The only sound was the steady hum of cameras still rolling. Easy smile faltered. He shot a quick glance toward the producers behind the glass, their hand signals frantic, but he stayed in his seat, clearly unsure how to reel this back. "I think we're getting a bit off track here," said finally, his voice tighter than before. "Let's talk about your new music. You've been working with some younger artists lately. Don't you dare try to change the subject." Chaka cut him off, her finger stabbing the air between them. "You opened this door when you questioned my words. You want to talk about appropriate? What's appropriate is acknowledging that the music industry has a long, ugly history of exploiting black artists. Pretending otherwise is willful ignorance." Composure began to crack. "Look, I respect your perspective, but this is a morning show. People tune in for uplifting content, not lectures about systemic oppression in the entertainment industry." Chaka's voice rose, commanding every ear in the studio. "Lectures? You think me speaking truth about my life is lecturing? That's the problem, The moment a black woman gets passionate about injustice, suddenly we're angry. Suddenly it's too much. That's not what I meant at all," protested, but his voice wavered. "Then what did you mean?" Chaka leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Because it sounds to me like you're more concerned with keeping your audience comfortable than actually hearing what I have to say." Face flushed. His genial on-air persona had vanished, replaced by a man struggling to hold control. "Chaka, I've been doing this over 30 years, he said, his tone sharpening. "I've interviewed thousands of people from all backgrounds. I know how to conduct a respectful conversation. Do you?" Chaka snapped back instantly. "Because right now, it feels like you're policing my language, toning down my message to make it palatable for your viewers. That's not respect, That's control." The producers gestured wildly from behind the cameras, but both of them were locked in now, eyes locked, voices hard. "I'm not trying to control anything," said, his trademark warmth gone. "I'm trying to have a productive discussion. But when you come on here throwing around inflammatory comparisons and accusations, it makes it difficult to have any meaningful dialogue. Inflammatory? Chaka's laugh cracked like a whip. The truth is inflammatory to you? The fact that I lost millions because some executive decided my music belonged to him? The fact that I couldn't perform my own songs without paying royalties to men who never wrote a note, that's inflammatory? That's not what I said, Al countered, his voice strained, higher-pitched now. I'm talking about how you're saying it. There's a difference between sharing your story and making sweeping generalizations about an entire industry. Chaka shook her head and let out a cold laugh. Sweeping generalizations? Do you know how many of my peers from the 70s and 80s are living in poverty right now? How many died broke while the labels that robbed them are still raking in millions? This isn't a generalization, Al, it's a pattern. I sympathize with that, Al said, leaning back as if the physical space could shield him from her intensity. But coming on national television and making these kinds of sweeping statements without nuance, without context, it's irresponsible. The word landed like a grenade. Irresponsible. Crew members froze. Several instinctively stepped back. The tension in Studio 1A had crossed from uncomfortable to combustible. Chaka's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. Irresponsible? You want to talk about irresponsible? Chaka's voice cut through the studio like a blade. What's irresponsible is sitting in your cushioned chair with your cushioned salary, telling a woman who's lived decades of exploitation that speaking her truth is somehow out of line. Al's protest came fast, defensive. That's not fair. You don't know what I've been through, what I've faced in this industry. You're right, Chaka snapped, though her voice stayed razor sharp. I don't know your story, but I do know this. You've never had an executive tell you your natural hair isn't marketable. You've never had to watch someone else get rich off a song you bled for. And you've never been told to smile more, be grateful, tone down your anger at injustice, just to keep your seat at the table. Al's jaw clenched. His voice dropped, tight. And you think that because I'm successful now, I haven't faced discrimination? You think I haven't had to fight for respect? I've dealt with racist attacks, death threats, harassment. Don't you dare tell me I don't know struggle. Then you should understand better than anyone, Chaka fired back instantly, leaning in. Why it matters to speak truth to power. And yet here you are, doing their work for them, trying to quiet me down. I'm not silencing anyone, Al shot back, his voice now nearly as sharp as hers. But there's a time and place. And a morning show interview about your memoir might not be the right venue for a political manifesto. Chaka's laugh rang out, sharp and bitter. A political manifesto? Sharing my own life experiences is now a political manifesto. This is exactly what I mean, Al. The moment we start telling uncomfortable truths, suddenly we're too political, too inappropriate, too much. The tension was suffocating. Camera operators glanced nervously at the producers. No one knew whether to cut to commercial or let the fire burn. Look, Al said, dragging a hand down his face, frustration etched into his features. I came into this interview wanting to celebrate you, your career, your book, your music. Instead, we're in a shouting match about industry politics that our viewers didn't sign up for. Our viewers? Chaka repeated, her voice laced with disdain. No, Al, your viewers. The ones you bend over backwards to protect from reality. God forbid they choke on their morning coffee hearing about something more challenging than a weather forecast. Al's face flushed deeper, anger creeping past his usual calm. That's completely unfair, and you know it. The Today Show covers serious issues all the time. We've done countless segments on social justice, inequality, systemic problems. Safe segments, Chaka cut in, her voice low and lethal. Sanitized segments. Stories so polished they don't actually risk making anyone uncomfortable. That's not truth-telling, Al. That's packaging reality into something you can sell between ad breaks. Segments where you control the narrative, where nothing gets too uncomfortable for your audience, Chaka said, her words like knives. But when someone like me sits here and speaks the raw, unfiltered truth about what it's really like, suddenly I'm inappropriate. Al's composure cracked. Raw truth? Fine. The raw truth is you came here to promote a book, And instead, you've turned this into a personal attack. On me. On this show. You've made assumptions about my character, my integrity, my understanding of discrimination. Chaka shot to her feet so fast her chair rolled backward with a screech. You're damn right I'm angry, Al. I'm angry that after 50 years in this business, I still have to justify my right to speak about my own life. I'm angry that even now, even with all I've accomplished, I'm told to tone it down, calm it down, be more reasonable. Al stood too, his height giving him a physical edge. But Chaka's presence swallowed the room. Nobody is telling you to calm down, he said, his voice rising. But if you can't have a civil conversation without turning everything into a confrontation, then maybe television interviews aren't the right platform for you. The silence was brutal. Every crew member in Studio 1A froze, eyes darting between them, waiting for the explosion. Chaka's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Television interviews aren't the right platform for me. Her chest heaved with fury. Let me tell you something, Al Roker. I've been doing television interviews since before you even knew what a weather map was. I've sat across from Johnny Carson, from Oprah, and not one of them, not a single one, ever had the audacity to tell me what stage I belong on. Al realized instantly he'd crossed a line, but pride kept him standing tall. That's not what I meant, and you know it. I'm talking about having a productive conversation versus creating controversy for the sake of controversy, Chaka erupted. For the sake of controversy? You think I'm up here performing outrage for fun? You think I enjoy defending my right to speak about my own life? This isn't entertainment for me, Al. This is my reality. Decades of pain and frustration you just brushed off as inappropriate for your morning coffee crowd. Behind the cameras, producers waved frantically for a cut, but no one dared stop rolling. This was too raw, too powerful. I never dismissed your pain, Al said, though his voice wavered now. I'm just trying to understand why everything has to turn into a battle. Why can't we sit here and talk about your book, your music, your achievements? Because my achievements don't exist in a vacuum, Chaka thundered. My music, my career, my memoir, it's all tied to the struggle. You can't separate the art from the artist's scars, and you sure as hell can't separate my story from the systemic oppression that shaped it. Al's frustration spilled over. He threw his hands up. Fine. But does every conversation have to be a dissertation on oppression? Can't we celebrate the joy, the success, the positive aspects of your incredible career? Chaka laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Positive aspects? You want the glossy version, stripped of the truth. That's not celebration, Al. That's erasure. That's asking me to smile for your cameras and pretend the suffering never happened. That's not what I'm asking, Al insisted, his voice now ragged. I'm asking for balance. I'm asking for a conversation that doesn't alienate half our audience before we even get to the good stuff, Al said. His voice edged with strain. There it is, Chaka snapped, stabbing a finger at him, her eyes blazing. That's your real concern. Not my story. Not my truth. Not 50 years of surviving and thriving in this business. Your audience. Your ratings. Your comfort zone. Everything has to pass through the filter of what Al Roker and his morning show crowd can swallow with their coffee. Al's face flushed crimson, anger and embarrassment colliding. You know what? Yes, I do care about our audience. Millions of people trust us to start their day with information and inspiration, not with angry tirades about how terrible the world is. Angry tirades? Chaka's voice rose to a thunderclap, rattling the air. 50 years of clawing for respect, recognition, and basic human dignity, and you reduce it to an angry tirade? You just proved every damn point I've been making. She tore at her microphone, yanking it free with trembling hands. Each movement was sharp, decisive. You want your comfortable morning show? She seethed. You want your sanitized version of black success, smiles, hits, and watered-down struggle that won't upset anyone? Fine, you can have it. Without me. Chaka, please, Al said, suddenly panicked, realizing the interview was spiraling into disaster. Let's just take a breath. Find some common ground here. Common ground? She dropped the microphone onto her chair with a crack that echoed through the studio. Her glare cut straight through him. The common ground is gone, Al. It vanished the second you decided my lived experience was too uncomfortable for your viewers. It disappeared the moment you chose image over respect. I do respect you, Al insisted, his voice cracking. I respect your music, your strength, everything you've overcome. Chaka stopped at the edge of the stage, turning back with a look that could cut glass. No, you respect the version of me that fits neatly into your box. The grateful entertainer who smiles, sings the hits, and sprinkles in just enough struggle to make people feel good about progress. The moment I bring the real me, the woman who refuses to sugarcoat truth, you call it inappropriate. That's not fair, Al protested weakly. It's more than fair, she fired back. And the worst part? You don't even see it. You've been conditioned to expect Black women to package our pain in gratitude and softness. But when we show up with fire, when we demand to be heard, you can't handle it. The studio fell deathly silent. Cameras kept rolling, crew frozen, every producer too stunned to intervene. Chaka's voice dropped to ice. So go ahead. Give your audience their comfortable morning. But don't ever book another Black artist and expect them to perform for your comfort. Some of us respect ourselves too much for that. With regal poise, she turned and strode toward the exit. Every step a declaration. Chaka, wait! Al called out desperately, but she didn't so much as flinch. He turned back to the cameras, pale and shaken. We'll be right back, he muttered, his voice hollow. The Queen of Funk was gone, leaving behind a studio in stunned silence, and one broken host who had just learned that some storms can't be forecast, can't be controlled, and sure as hell can't be weathered with a smile.